President Donald Trump has once again jolted the U.S.-Korea alliance with an off-the-cuff remark that carried seismic diplomatic consequences. In a startling suggestion, Trump floated the idea that the United States should not only use, but actually own, the land that hosts roughly 28,500 American troops stationed in South Korea. What was supposed to be a largely symbolic summit instantly turned into a firestorm of controversy. The public reacted with outrage, scholars voiced alarm, and Seoul was left scrambling. This was not just the flippant banter of a real estate mogul turned politician. It was a calculated bargaining tactic, an attempt to reframe one of America's largest overseas military deployments as a valuable piece of property up for negotiation. The question now is whether the U.S.-Korea alliance still stands as a strategic shield, or whether it has been reduced to a risky real estate deal. On May 25th, during talks at the White House with South Korean President Lee, Trump bluntly argued that Washington ought to own the land where U.S. troops are stationed, specifically Camp Humphreys, the massive garrison in Pyeongtaek. In Trump's words, the U.S. had already spent billions of dollars building this fortress, so why settle for a lease when it could be permanent property? Though not a formal demand, the remark immediately sent shockwaves through Seoul. Within 2 days, South Korea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs was forced to clarify that no such request had been made, and to stress that the land grant for U.S. bases was part of the alliance agreement, not a commercial rental contract, as Trump had implied. Security experts in Seoul interpreted the move as another example of Trump's transactional style. He has long pressured allies to pay more for America's military presence. Under a recent agreement with the Biden administration, South Korea already agreed to pay the equivalent of $1.1 billion annually through 2026, up from roughly $1 billion this year. Yet Trump's comments signaled his desire to reopen that debate and extract more concessions. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton dismissed Trump's idea as nothing more than the mindset of a real estate developer. Indeed, Trump has previously mused about buying Greenland, controlling the Panama Canal, or even acquiring other strategic territories. For a president steeped in property deals, leases are seen as weak and insecure. Ownership means control. Bolton warned that such notions could resurface at any time, with destabilizing diplomatic consequences. For South Koreans, however, the concern went beyond legal technicalities. Under alliance treaties, the U.S. is granted usage rights, but sovereignty over Korean land is non-negotiable. To many in Seoul, Trump's words carried echoes of foreign domination, a painful reminder of the colonial past. Analysts in Washington noted that Trump's rhetoric may signal how he envisions America's global posture if re-elected, tilting harder toward Asia, downgrading Europe and the Middle East, and demanding greater financial and political returns from allies. In this logic, the U.S. would not continue stationing 28,500 troops on the peninsula without something permanent in return. That framing forces a stark question. Are America's interests still aligned with South Korea's? For decades, the alliance has rested on shared security goals, deterring North Korea and maintaining regional stability. But if viewed as a transactional property lease, the alliance risks being seen not as a protective shield, but as a financial burden, and even a form of leverage. The controversy escalated further when Trump, just hours before President Lee entered the Oval Office, fired off a social media post questioning what's really happening in South Korea, suggesting it looked like a purge or revolution. The blunt language immediately unsettled Seoul, reviving memories of Trump's 2020 confrontation with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky, when a supposed show of support turned into a humiliating grilling. During the tense opening of the summit, South Korean officials scrambled to explain that Trump's concerns stemmed from domestic investigations into past coup attempts, not instability affecting U.S. bases. Lee himself had to assure Trump that no American facilities were touched. Only then did Trump soften his tone, admitting he might have misunderstood intelligence briefings. President Lee responded with a careful mix of flattery and humor, praising Trump's Oval Office decor, touting the U.S. stock market's performance, and even half-joking about the possibility of a Trump Tower in Pyongyang if inter-Korean reconciliation succeeded. The charm offensive worked. Trump relented, offered warm words of support, and avoided another Zelensky-style confrontation. Yet beneath the cordial surface, critical questions remain unanswered. Trump had already broached the explosive idea of U.S. ownership of Korean military land, a demand Seoul cannot accept. In return, Lee pledged to raise defense spending and buy more advanced technology, signaling South Korea's intent to shoulder more of its own security burden. Experts argue that by sidestepping direct confrontation, Lee avoided a public humiliation. Still, the summit ended without concrete commitments from Washington. What remains is a haze of strategic ambiguity, where both sides preserved face but failed to chart a clear path forward. For Seoul, this was a sobering political lesson. Dealing with Trump means bracing for sudden shocks and unpredictable demands. The dreaded Zelensky moment did not materialize, but its shadow still looms large over the U.S.-Korea alliance, foreshadowing even tougher tests in the meetings to come.